The distant stars of the galaxy seemed dull and unimpressive compared to the vibrant chaos that filled the Calixian marketplace. A myriad of alien species, each more bizarre and vivid than the last, bustled through the crowded stalls, bartering in a cacophony of otherworldly languages. Through this teeming sea of interstellar commerce, Tom Hayes was dragged in chains, his human figure drawing curious glances and hostile stares alike. Tom, a seasoned pilot, had never imagined his first encounter with the inhabitants of Craniox would be as a captive. His ship had suffered a catastrophic malfunction, spiraling out of control and crashing into this alien world. His initial relief at surviving the crash was short-lived, as he was quickly apprehended by a group of Calixian hunters who seemed to recognize his value immediately, not as a guest, but as a potential offering. As they approached the grand temple at the city center, the atmosphere shifted. The playful bartering cries gave way to a somber murmur. The temple was a towering structure, adorned with luminous stones and sprawling murals depicting the Calixian deities, a stark reminder of the planet's deep spiritual heritage. The High Priestess, a regal figure with elongated limbs and shimmering robes that reflected the temple's glow, awaited Tom's arrival with a cold, penetrating gaze. Her voice echoed to the temple's vast chamber as she addressed the assembly. "Behold," she announced, her tones both melodic and chilling, "a gift from the skies, delivered into our hands. The gods grow weary of our usual offerings. They seek the vitality of a new spirit. This human will suffice." Tom was pushed forward, stumbling over the uneven stone floor. The crowd around him recoiled slightly, as if his very presence could corrupt. His mind raced, searching for any means of escape, but the ceremonial guards surrounding him were vigilant and impassive to his plight. He was led down a series of winding passages, each step taking him deeper into the temple sanctum. The sounds from the marketplace faded into a suffocating silence, broken only by the echoing footsteps of his captors and the distant chants of unseen monks. Tom's cell was a small, dimly lit chamber with walls that seemed to pulse with a faint, eerie light. The only furnishings were a rough-hewn stone bench and a small basin of water. As the heavy door clanged shut, the finality of his situation sank in. He was alone, a stranger in a strange land, awaiting a fate decided by the whims of gods he did not know. Outside his cell, the temple thrummed with the energy of the coming ritual. Whispers of a royal visit reached his ears, carrying with them a sliver of hope. Perhaps among the royals, there would be someone with the power or the inclination to see him as more than just an offering. As night fell over the temple, Tom sat in the flickering shadows, contemplating his life back on Earth, the faces of his family and the vast, uncharted cosmos that had led him here. His thoughts were a tangle of fear, defiance, and an unyielding resolve to survive. He was not ready to die, not here, not like this. As the distant chants grew louder, a determined spark ignited within him. He would fight, somehow, to return to the stars. Princess Serelith, draped in robes that sparkled with the colors of the distant nebulae, strode through the shadowed corridors of the grand temple, with her retinue trailing behind. Her visits were often unexpected, her curiosity unbounded by the protocols that typically guided the royal family's conduct. The temple, with its ancient stones whispering secrets of the past, was a place that called to her, a place where the veil between the divine and the mundane seemed thinnest. On this particular visit, her purpose was shrouded in mystery, even to her closest advisors. The princess had heard rumors of a new type of offering, a human, a rare creature with a spirit said to burn brighter than the stars from which it came. Such beings were not unknown to the people of Craniox, but they were rare, and their appearances were always shrouded in omens and portents. As she navigated through the temple, her eyes, bioluminescent and piercing, scanned every shadow, every whisper of movement. Her mind, ever sharp and probing, questioned the validity of using such a being for a mere sacrifice. What wisdom, what secrets might be lost if the human was simply offered up to the gods? Explain to me why a human is here, in the heart of our sacred temple. Seralith asked her escort, a high-ranking Templar who was well-versed in the rituals but less accustomed to the princess's abrupt inquiries. "He is an offering, your highness," the Templar replied, his voice a mixture of reverence and discomfort. "Captured after his vessel fell from the skies. The high priestess believes his sacrifice will appease the gods and bring prosperity to our land." "Absurd," she whispered under her breath, her gaze hardening with resolve. "Lead me to him." The Templar hesitated, his protocol-bound mind wrestling with the princess's command. Yet, in the face of her unwavering stare, he relented, guiding her through a labyrinth of corridors to the dimly lit cell where Tom was held. The sight of Tom, looking more bewildered than fearful, struck a chord in Seralith. His features were so distinctly different from her own, less ethereal, more grounded. Yet, there was a palpable energy to him, a resilience that resonated with her own spirit. "Why is he to be sacrificed?" she questioned aloud, not just to her escort but to herself. "For the gods' favor, your highness," the Templar repeated, this time with a hint of doubt creeping into his voice. "And have the gods explicitly demanded this man's life?" Seralith pushed, her tone both challenging and curious. The Templar had no answer, his silence filling the space between them with tension. "Unlock his cell," Seralith commanded, stepping forward. The Templar, bound by duty yet swayed by the authority of her voice, obeyed. The heavy door swung open with a resounding creak. Tom, taken aback by the sudden intrusion, found himself staring into the eyes of the princess. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice wary yet tinged with a defiant hope. "I am Seralith, daughter of the monarch of Craniox," she introduced herself, her voice soft yet carrying an undeniable command. "And you are Tom, a being of earth, caught in the gears of our traditions." "Yes," Tom replied, the reality of his situation settling in as he spoke his own name, grounding himself in his identity despite the surreal circumstances. "Help me understand your world, Tom of Earth," Seralith said, stepping into the cell with a grace that belied her royal status. "And I might help you escape the fate my people have crafted for you." In the flickering torchlight, an unlikely alliance began to form, one that might shift the course of their lives and the history of Craniox itself. As they talked, the walls of the cell seemed to recede, replaced by the vastness of potential that now lay before them. In the quiet solitude of the temple's archives, Princess Seralith and Tom Hayes sat surrounded by ancient scrolls and artifacts, each piece echoing the deep history and complex culture of Craniox. The princess, usually so composed and enigmatic, displayed a rare excitement as she listened intently to Tom's descriptions of Earth and the myriad cultures and technologies that thrived there. "Your world seems so vibrant, so fiercely independent in its evolution and conflicts," Seralith remarked, her eyes reflecting a starry curiosity. "It is unlike anything recorded in our annals, where harmony and adherence to the divine will have always shaped our way of life." Tom nodded, his mind racing not only with the desire to share his world, but also with the urgency of his predicament. "Earth has its beauties and its perils, much like here, I suppose. But we value our freedom fiercely. Freedom to choose, to explore, to be more than what fate might initially offer. And it is precisely that spirit, that choice, I wish to extend to you now," Seralith declared, her voice firm with newfound resolve. "The rituals of sacrifice, the obedience to what we presume are the gods' desires. Perhaps it's time we question these old paths." Their conversation deepened. Turning to the texts that surrounded them, Seralith shared legends of ancient Cranioxian heroes who defied the gods to carve out their own destinies, mirroring the human tales of rebellion and innovation Tom recounted. "See here," Seralith said, pulling a heavy tome from a nearby shelf. The book was bound in shimmering fabric that seemed to pulse with light. "This is the Chronicle of the Skyward Bound, a compilation of stories about those who dared to question the divine edicts. There might be a precedent here for us to challenge the High Priestess's intentions." Together, they pored over the Chronicle, discovering accounts of ancient rituals that could protect individuals from divine retribution, rituals forgotten and buried under centuries of strict theological control. Inspired, they devised a plan that would not only save Tom from sacrifice, but also possibly enlighten her people to new possibilities. "Help me with this ritual," Tom suggested, pointing to a passage describing a ceremony of protection. "It says here that with the right elements and incantations, we can shield a soul from the god's gaze." Saralitha's eyes lit up with understanding and excitement. "This could be our answer, Tom. Not just for you, but for all of Craniox. If we demonstrate that alternative rituals can work, perhaps we can move away from sacrifices altogether." Their plan quickly took shape. They would perform the ancient ritual in secret, using it to protect Tom during what was supposed to be his sacrifice. This act of defiance and demonstration would need careful preparation and timing, for if they were caught, the consequences would be severe not only for them, but also for Saralitha's royal family. As night deepened into the early hours of morning, Saralith and Tom gathered the necessary materials, sacred herbs, ceremonial stones, and texts from the archives. They moved through the darkened temple corridors, avoiding the watchful eyes of the temple guards and the ever-present gaze of the high priestess. Their final challenge before the day of the ritual was to secure a location known only to the royal family, a secluded grotto where the energies of the planet were said to be strongest. Here, they would perform their ceremony under the twin moons, away from prying eyes. With each step of their preparation, their alliance grew stronger, bound by a mutual respect and a shared vision of a future where freedom and tradition could coexist. As they set out for the grotto, the first light of dawn began to edge the horizon, casting long shadows and painting the world in hues of hope and rebellion. The dim corridors of the temple were usually a place for quiet contemplation and the soft murmurs of prayer. However, on this night, they were filled with the hurried footsteps of Princess Saralith and Tom Hayes as they made their way towards the royal archives. The gravity of their mission weighed heavily on them, each step echoing not just against the stone floors, but in their hearts as well. The archives, located in the oldest part of the temple, were a labyrinth of knowledge that few had the privilege to access. Saralith, familiar with its hidden passages and secluded nooks, led Tom through the maze with a confident stride. They needed one last piece of the puzzle, a specific scroll that detailed the celestial alignments necessary for their ritual. As they entered the vaulted chamber that housed the archives, Tom couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The room was vast, shelves reaching up into shadows cast by the dim light of bioluminescent lamps. Scrolls, books, and artifacts filled every nook, each piece a bearer of history and power. "Here," Saralith whispered, pulling a scroll from a shelf hidden behind a false panel. "This will guide us in aligning our energies with the cosmos to maximize the ritual's effectiveness." Just as Tom took the scroll, the sound of armored footsteps echoed through the halls. The temple guards, alerted to their presence, were closing in. Saralitha's eyes met Tom's, a flash of determination passing between them. "We need to move now," she said, tucking the scroll into her robe. They darted through the archives, Saralitha's knowledge of the temple's layout guiding them through hidden doors and secret passageways. Yet, despite their efforts, the sound of pursuit grew louder. The guards were well-trained, their movements coordinated, and soon Tom and Saralith found themselves cornered in an ancillary chamber, the only exit blocked by the advancing guards. Tom, his back against the wall, felt the fight-or-flight response surge within him. "What now?" he asked, ready to defend both himself and the princess. Saralith, calmer, focused her energy, her hands beginning to glow with a soft light. "We stand our ground," she replied. "Use non-lethal force. We need to reach the grotto." The guards stormed into the room, stun batons raised. Tom, relying on his military training, engaged the guards with swift, disabling moves. Saralith used her psychic abilities, creating illusions to disorient the guards, making them see multiple versions of themselves. It was a desperate struggle, each dodge and parry draining their energy. Yet, with a combination of Tom's combat skills and Saralitha's powers, they managed to push through the guards, leaving them confused and temporarily incapacitated. Breathing heavily, they made their way out of the temple and into the open air. The city was quiet, most of its inhabitants asleep, unaware of the drama unfolding in their sacred halls. "The grotto isn't far," Sarilith said, leading the way down a narrow path that wound its way through the city and into the dense foliage beyond. "Once we're there, we can prepare the ritual." As they left the city behind, the first light of dawn began to touch the sky, painting it with streaks of orange and pink. The grotto, a natural cave adorned with luminescent crystals, was a place of power, sacred and untouched by the modernity that had begun to seep into other parts of the planet. Here, they would make their stand, blending ancient ritual with the desperate hope of two beings bound by a shared vision of freedom and change. As they began their preparations, the sky lightened, heralding a day that would either see their success or their end. The secluded grotto was bathed in the early morning light, its walls shimmering with natural crystals that amplified the energy of the rising sun. Princess Sarilith and Tom Hayes had set up their ritual space at the center, where the earth felt most alive, its pulse strong and clear. Around them, the tools of their ritual lay in precise arrangements, ancient stones forming a circle, sacred herbs smoldering in a clay bowl, and the crucial scrolls unfurled, their ancient texts ready to guide their actions. As Sarilith began to chant in the old tongue, her voice melded with the whispers of the wind, creating a harmonious blend that seemed to resonate with the very soul of Craniox. Tom, though unfamiliar with the language, felt the power of her words, a deep, resonant vibration that stirred something primal within him. Suddenly, the tranquility of the moment was shattered by the arrival of the High Priestess and her elite guard. They had followed the fugitives, guided by the disturbed energies of the temple sanctum. The High Priestess's eyes burned with a mix of fury and fear as she beheld the scene before her. "Blasphemy!" she cried out, her voice echoing off the grotto walls. "To defy the gods in such a manner, to reject their demands for sacrifice. You shall both suffer for this affront." Sarilith stepped forward, her presence commanding despite the threat. "We seek not to defy the gods, but to honor them with a new understanding," she declared, her voice steady and unwavering. "This ritual is old, forgotten, but valid. It honors the spirit without the need for blood." The High Priestess sneered, raising her hands as dark energy gathered around her. "You are misguided, child. The gods demand obedience, not interpretation. Your actions endanger us all." With a swift motion, the High Priestess unleashed her power, sending a wave of dark energy towards Tom and Sarilith. Reacting quickly, Sarilith countered with a burst of her own energy, her hands glowing brighter as she channeled the force of the grotto's crystals. The clash of powers created a spectacle of light and shadow, the energies wrestling with each other, seeking dominance. Tom, caught in the middle, felt the raw force tugging at his very essence. He knew he had to act, not just as a bystander, but as a participant in this battle of wills. Gathering his courage, Tom moved to the ritual circle, picking up the ancient stones and positioning them as the scrolls instructed. Each stone pulsed with energy, and as he placed them, he whispered words of peace and unity, words that Sarilith had taught him from the scrolls. The High Priestess, seeing her initial attack thwarted, prepared for another assault, her power growing darker, more desperate. But before she could release it, the ritual circle activated, a brilliant light erupting from its center, engulfing Tom and Sarilith in a shield of radiant energy. The light was overwhelming, pure and cleansing. It touched everyone in the grotto, the guards and the High Priestess alike, its intensity growing stronger with each passing second. Inside the circle, Tom and Sarilith continued the ritual, their voices now joining in a powerful chant that seemed to draw the very light of the twin moons down upon them. As the ritual reached its climax, the energy released into a spectacular display of celestial light, cascading through the grotto like a waterfall of stars. The High Priestess, her dark power unable to withstand such purity, fell to her knees, her eyes wide with awe and fear. The ritual concluded. The light dimmed, leaving a profound silence in its wake. Tom and Sarah stood unharmed, their bond strengthened by the shared ordeal. The High Priestess looked up at them, her expression one of confusion and dawning realization. "You have shown us a new way," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Perhaps the gods do listen to more than just our sacrifices." The guards, released from the spell of the dark energy, stood uncertain, looking to Sarah for guidance. The dawn breaking fully now. The grotto felt peaceful, the crisis of faith it had witnessed settling into a new, hopeful understanding. Sarah approached the High Priestess, offering her hand in peace. "Let us learn together," she proposed, "and lead our people not through fear, but through wisdom." The High Priestess, after a moment's hesitation, accepted her hand, their agreement sealing the beginning of a new era for Craniox, an era where sacrifice would no longer define their relationship with the divine, and where the human spirit, embodied by Tom, would inspire a new path of coexistence and respect. Under the gentle glow of Craniox's twin moons, the world seemed to pause, holding its breath as it witnessed the dawn of a new era. Princess Saralith and Tom Hayes stood side by side in the grotto, the remnants of the ritual's energy still crackling faintly in the air around them. The High Priestess, along with her guards, had departed, leaving behind a promise of dialogue and change. The night's events had sparked a transformation not just within the temple's walls, but potentially across the entire planet. Tom, looking up at the star-studded sky, felt a profound connection to this alien world that had so unexpectedly become his sanctuary. Beside him, Sarah seemed contemplative, her eyes reflecting the starlight, her mind undoubtedly weaving the new threads of her people's future. As dawn breaks, so does the hold of old fears and prejudices, Sarah mused aloud, her voice tinged with both excitement and the weight of responsibility. "We have shown that the gods do not demand our obedience through sacrifice, but through understanding and growth." Tom nodded, his thoughts drifting to Earth, where such revelations were often met with resistance. "Back home, change is often seen as a threat before it's recognized as an opportunity," he shared. "How do you think your people will accept this new path?" Sarah smiled, a glimmer of determination sparking in her gaze. "Change is never easy, but when it's fostered by truth and understanding, it can lead to incredible outcomes. We will need to teach, to explain, and to demonstrate that what we have achieved here tonight is a testament to a greater power, the power of unity and curiosity." The first rays of the sun began to touch the horizon, casting a warm light that painted the grotto in hues of gold and amber. Sarah and Tom took a moment to watch the sunrise, a symbol of their newfound hope and the bright future that lay ahead. "In many ways, you have been a catalyst for this change," Sarah said, turning to Tom. "Your arrival, though fraught with peril, brought us to this pivotal moment. Craniox owes you a great debt." Tom chuckled softly, his eyes still on the horizon. "I didn't do much more than crash and get captured. It was your vision and courage that changed the course of your world." "Perhaps," Sarah conceded, "but sometimes it takes an outsider to show us what we've been too blind to see. Your perspective, your experiences, they were invaluable." As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the landscape and casting long shadows behind the rocks and trees, the grotto began to fill with other figures. These were not guards or temple servants, but representatives from various sectors of Cranioxian society, scientists, scholars, artists, and more. They had been summoned by Sarah, invited to witness the aftermath of the ritual and to discuss the implications of last night's revelations. Together, they formed a council, a diverse assembly that would help guide Craniox through the changes to come. Discussions began, filled with questions, debates, and plans for the future. Tom, with his unique background, contributed insights from Earth's history and his own experiences, helping to bridge gaps and inspire innovative ideas. The day wore on, rich with the spirit of cooperation and forward thinking. As the meeting concluded, The participants left with a sense of purpose and optimism, their minds alive with possibilities. Saralith, standing once again beside Tom, looked out over her world, her heart full of hope. "Today we have laid the foundation for a new Craniox," she declared. "One where fear and sacrifice are replaced by knowledge and respect. And you, Tom Hayes, will always be remembered as the human who helped us see beyond the stars." Tom, overwhelmed by the honor and the surreal journey he had undergone, simply nodded, his heart swelling with pride and a peculiar sense of belonging. This alien world, once so threatening, now felt like a second home, a place where his accidental arrival had sparked a revolution, both planetary and personal. As the sun set, casting the sky in brilliant shades of purple and orange, Tom and Saralith knew that the road ahead would be challenging. But together, with the united will of Craniox's people, they were ready to face whatever came next, forging a future where humanity and alien kind could learn from each other, sharing a galaxy that suddenly seemed a little smaller, a little warmer, and infinitely more hopeful.